What's going on, everybody? Kaleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 and the Cricket Dream 5G. Now, before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you want to learn more about either of these phones, be sure to check out my full reviews and tips and tricks videos for them as well. But with that being said, let's get started. Now, the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 has a 6.8-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 396, and an aspect ratio of 20.5:9. We got a hole punch up here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 16 megapixels. Now, the Cricket Dream 5G has a 6.82-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 263, and an aspect ratio of 20:9. We got a water drop notch up here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 13 megapixels. So overall, for what they are, both of these displays are actually pretty good, but the Moto G Stylus 2022 definitely has an advantage here with a much higher quality display. You can definitely tell the 1080p display does make a huge difference. The Moto G Stylus 2022 definitely has a much sharper image, and the display quality is overall just better. With the Moto G Stylus 2022, the colors are going to be a lot brighter and more bold, giving you a better experience with content consumption. So whether you're streaming videos, playing games, viewing photos, whatever the case may be, things are overall going to look better with the Moto G Stylus 2022. The Cricket Dream 5G does have a slightly bigger display, but overall, I do think the quality in the Moto G Stylus 2022's display does outweigh the slight size advantage in the Cricket Dream 5G. Now, one thing I like about both of these displays is the form factor we're getting here, because at 20.5:9, it is noticeably taller and more narrow than the average phone, and this is going to give you a better experience when you're watching videos in landscape mode, and if you're reading something, you'll be able to fit more stuff on the screen without scrolling. Now, for storage, the Moto G Stylus 2022 has 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and the Cricket Dream 5G is getting 64 gigabytes with microSD card expansion as well. So there's definitely quite the difference here. The Moto G Stylus 2022 with double the storage of the Cricket Dream 5G is going to have a huge advantage. Now, with 64 gigabytes, you're probably going to get by just fine as long as you're careful with what you put on your phone. But if you're a power user, if you have lots of apps and photos and videos and all that stuff, then the Moto G Stylus 2022 is probably going to have an advantage here, because even though both of these phones can use a microSD card, it's nice to have more storage on the phone itself so you don't have to deal with that. Now, with the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022, we're not getting wireless charging, but surprisingly, the Cricket Dream 5G does actually have wireless charging. Now, of course, wireless charging isn't going to change your entire experience, but it is definitely a nice feature to have. I personally use it quite a bit, and it's definitely one of those things that you probably won't really think much of if you don't have it, but if you do, you're most likely going to want to use it pretty often. And it's especially interesting to see this feature in the Cricket Dream 5G, because this is really an entry-level phone, definitely lower end than the Moto G Stylus 2022, and usually for whatever reason, you don't typically find wireless charging in any phone that's not a flagship phone. So if this feature is important to you, definitely keep this in mind. Both of these phones do have fingerprint scanners, with the Moto G Stylus 2022 having one right here on the power key, and the Cricket Dream 5G having a fingerprint scanner right here on the back. So starting with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we're going to give these fingerprint scanners a try and see how well they work. There we go, one more time. And there we go. Definitely real fast and responsive, no issues here. Moving on to the Cricket Dream 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So both of these fingerprint scanners are real fast and responsive, no issues here. Another thing to keep in mind is that the Moto G Stylus 2022 also has Face Unlock, whereas the Cricket Dream 5G doesn't have Face Unlock, so you'll have to use the fingerprint scanner instead. Now, taking a look at the rear camera setup here, with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we got a triple camera with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera that also doubles as a macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. With the Cricket Dream 5G, we're getting a quad camera setup with a 48 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. So in general, both of these phones are going to have pretty much the same basic features. Technically, the Cricket Dream 5G does have one more camera, but I don't think that really counts because the only reason it's like this is because the macro camera and the ultra-wide camera in the Moto G Stylus 2022 are actually combined, which is something you don't see every day. But regardless, both of these phones have all the basic features. Now, as far as features in the camera app itself, I will say the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to have some more interesting stuff and better features overall. And in addition to this, the camera quality itself is going to be a little bit better with the Moto G Stylus 2022. The images are going to be a little bit brighter, the colors are going to be bolder, and the details are probably going to be a tiny bit sharper. Now, that's not to say that the Cricket Dream 5G takes bad photos, because if you're just taking a few photos here and there, maybe for social media or something like that, the Cricket Dream 5G is going to be fine. The camera is definitely usable, and compared to lots of other phones in the same price range, it's really not bad. But I would definitely say, as far as the quality goes, the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to be on a whole different level. So if you want to take a lot of photos for social media or something like that, or even just for the sake of taking nice photos, the Moto G Stylus 2022 is definitely going to have an advantage. Now for video, both of these phones cap out at 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so nothing out of the ordinary there. Now internally, the Moto G Stylus 2022 is getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G88 processor. The Cricket Dream 5G is getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. Now I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on these phones, and with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we're getting a single core score of 368 and a multi-core score of 1304. With the Cricket Dream 5G, we're getting a single core score of 545 and a multi-core score of 1666. So there's definitely quite a difference here. This is one area where the Cricket Dream 5G does have a clear advantage, and from what I know personally using both devices, the Cricket Dream 5G is for sure going to be the faster device out of the two. Now that's not to say that the Moto G Stylus 2022 is exactly slow, because it's really not. For basic activities like sending text messages, making calls, browsing the web, going on social media, and then streaming videos and light gaming, it's all going to be perfectly fine. But if you're going to be on your phone a lot, or if you're going to be doing more high-end activities like gaming and video editing, then the Cricket Dream 5G is going to have an advantage here. In addition to this, keep in mind that the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022 is not a 5G phone. Despite there actually being a Moto G Stylus 5G, this is not it. This is only a 4G phone. I do think there is going to be another Moto G Stylus 5G sometime this year, but again, this specific phone is not 5G, whereas the Cricket Dream 5G, as the name implies, is a 5G phone. So if you really want a phone with 5G connectivity, definitely keep this in mind, because the Cricket Dream 5G is probably going to be the one you want to go with. Now for battery, the Moto G Stylus 2022 has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 10-watt fast charging. The Cricket Dream 5G has a 4750 mAh battery. Now, I haven't actually found any info on fast charging, but from experience, I'm assuming this phone does support 10-watt fast charging as well, because it charges up really fast to the point where you're really not going to tell the difference. So in my experience, both of these phones do charge up really fast. So if you get one of those overpowered car chargers or something like that and put one of these phones on it, you're not going to have to worry about it taking too long to charge up. Now, as far as actual battery life and longevity goes, I feel like the difference between a 4750 mAh battery and a 5000 mAh battery is really kind of negligible. I mean, technically the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to have longer battery life, but in general, both of these phones are not only going to have a ton of life per charge, but also lots of longevity down the road. So when the batteries start to wear out, which all batteries do, you won't have to replace either of these phones nearly as quickly as you would with phones that have smaller batteries. So if battery life is important, either of these phones will be a great choice, but if it's your top priority, then technically the Moto G Stylus 2022 is going to be the better device for that. Now another thing feature-wise to keep in mind is that the Cricket Dream 5G does have NFC and the Moto G Stylus 2022 doesn't. Now in case you don't know what it is, NFC is the technology behind contactless mobile payment services like Google Pay. So if you like to use those services, then the Cricket Dream 5G is going to be the option to go with, because this phone does have NFC, whereas the Moto G Stylus 2022 doesn't. Now this is kind of interesting because the Cricket Dream 5G is like half the price of the Moto G Stylus 2022. And almost every phone in the Moto G Stylus's price range is getting NFC these days. So I don't know why this phone doesn't have NFC. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially since contactless mobile payment services in the last couple of years have been more and more popular. But regardless, at least the Cricket Dream 5G does have it. So if you do want that feature, definitely keep this in mind. And speaking of other features, we can't really talk about the Moto G Stylus without mentioning the stylus at least once. Now, I personally don't really use this feature, which is why I don't typically talk about it a whole lot, but all the same, it is here. And in case you're wondering how well it works, it really works just as well as we can expect from a phone like this. Not good enough to do any real drawing, but definitely usable all the same. But in conclusion, which one of these phones is better? Now, this is actually kind of a loaded question because I have two answers here. On one hand, I do think the Moto G Stylus 2022 is objectively a better phone. It has a much better looking display, a better camera, more storage, a more premium feel with the 90Hz refresh rate, a slightly larger battery, and overall, I do like Motorola's Android skin quite a bit better than Cricket's. But on the other hand, another question that really comes up is which phone is actually a better value for the money? And on that one, I would have to give it to the Cricket Dream 5G. This phone is barely over half the price of the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022, yet it has more processing power, just as large of a display, similar camera features with decently impressive photo quality, a battery that's almost as big, and some extra features that the Moto G Stylus 2022 doesn't have, like NFC and 5G connectivity. So technically, while the Moto G Stylus 2022 does have most of the advantages over the Cricket Dream 5G, I am a lot more impressed with the Cricket Dream 5G relative to the price range than I am with the Moto G Stylus 2022. Now, if you could get both of these phones for free or something like that, that would be completely different, and these deals are always changing all the time, especially with Cricket specifically. But overall, at the same price, I would say the Moto G Stylus 2022 is a little bit better, but relative to their full price, I would say the Cricket Dream 5G does provide a lot more value for the money. Now, once again, if you want to learn more about either of these phones, be sure to check out my full reviews and tips and tricks videos for them on the channel. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. But as always, I will see you in the next one.